Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. I'm Tennison.
And I'm Ginelle. Thank you for joining us as we discuss topics and give practical tools that help you live, grow, and be in healthy, joy-filled relationship with God, yourself, and others.
For more information and resources, or if you're looking for coaching, connection, and community, visit tableandwell.org. We hope you enjoy this podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. This is episode number 18 of our Relational Maturity Revisited series. Got it that time. Don't tell me. But we are in the second part. We've been doing this for a minute, so we're a little, it's all good. But so we are in the second part of our elder maturity stage. And today we are going to jump in and we're going to talk about the elder stage task. So again, these are the things that we need to do as elders to be fully mature in this space. So we covered needs in our last podcast and a couple other things there and kind of introed it there. And we're going to jump into these tasks right away because we have a lot to cover and there's a lot of good information here and a lot of just good conversation to have in this. So on our list here, the first task that needs to be completed would be establish an accurate community identity by finding out what their community has been designed by God to be rather than imposing what they would like it to be.
The sign of a mature elder is
that.
Right.
That is so good. Because again, your job as an elder is to take care of the community with joy. And if you remember as a parent, again, everything compounds. And so you take all of the different maturity skills in each one of those and you move them into the next one up. And in this case, it's the past four into the elder stage. And so what is your community supposed to look like? So that could be your family. Talk about that. It could be if it's your like your kids, your grandkids, maybe great grandkids. Like what is God ordained or what is He designed?
Who is your community?
Who is So yeah. Right. Well, yeah. Thank you. Like first define who your community is.
Right.
And then who is your community supposed to be?
Right.
Like what's the purpose of the community? What's the identity?
Right.
Of your community, and then begin to guide, lead, advise,
draw that out
of
invest in
all of those things.
Yeah. Well, we didn't really talk about this in the parent maturity stage, but it's compounded here.
Yeah.
So a good parent knows who their child is, understands their God-given identity, and invests into bringing that forth.
Yes.
Right? They don't invest into bringing what I think that child should be forth.
Yeah.
Like, well, I think they should be an engineer and instead they want to be a musician.
Right.
But they're investing into that child's identity and seeking God on who that child was designed to be. Yeah. And so the same concept applies here with this idea of the elder is seeking the identity of the community as a whole, as our family as a whole. Maybe that means their community is their biological family and who are we as a unit.
Yep.
Not who do I wish we were or who I wanted us to be or who we should have been, but like who are we actually?
Yes.
By God's design.
Yeah.
Then how do I help invest myself into bringing that forth?
Yeah. What are the gifts and talents that are naturally happening in this community? And then how do I, as an elder, speak into that, invest in that, all of those different things?
And it could also look like values. What are the values of what's intrinsic to this group of people? Not just even talent. But it could be talent too. But what are the values that we're to bring into the world, that we are to expand in the world? What is the gifts that we bring as a unit together and as individuals that are really going to make a difference? And how can I help bring that about?
Yeah. Which kind of leads right into the next one. It's to value all community members and see them as God sees them, looking past their flaws and facades to see the person they have been designed to be. So again, similarly, like you're doing with the community, you're doing the same thing with the individual members of that community. How does God see them? Who does He say that they are? And you're praying about that. You're investing in that. You're thinking on that. And then you're, again, drawing all of that out. And you're even looking at not even looking at, but looking past the rough edges that you'll see, the prickly things that people will put out there because maybe who they really are has been shut down or not valued. And so they put on this facade. They don't really give their true feelings about things. They don't actually grow in the gifting that like you can see clear as day, because it's been shut down in the past and it hasn't had any value for others, people in their life. And so as an elder, it's like being able to see that and then continue to draw that out of them, continue to remind them and lead them in that direction.
And this is such a big deal when we talk about needing elders to help us grow in the maturity gaps that we missed.
Yeah.
So in order for an elder to help me grow in the spaces of infant maturity or in child maturity, they have to be able to tolerate the fact that I'm going to act like a child right now, right? Or I'm going to be extra needy, or I'm not going to, or I'm going to have a clear and obvious need and I'm not going to know how to communicate that, right?
Yep.
Or I'm going to do poorly communicating that. But that elder has the ability to see past it, much like a healthy parent can see past their child's inability to act like themselves at times or in spaces that they need to grow. So that this comes into play, especially as we're rebuilding our communities and their maturity, is mature elders really need a strength here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a patience.
And a patience. Oh, much. Yes. Which then goes into this next one here, which is they can act like themselves in the midst of difficulty, which is something that you learn in the adult stage. Actually, in the adult stage, where you learn to act like yourself in the middle of hardship, in the middle of hard times, where the elder can persevere and weather the storm that may come at them, because they are investing and they're trying, but they're able to stay consistent. They can act like themselves even when things are difficult, even when they have to make hard choices and they can have to say things that may not be popular, but they're able to still hold fast and act like themselves and not let I was going to say little things, it may be a big thing, throw them off to where, again, it's that they're modeling for the community. What does it look like to be
right? They're secure and stable.
Yeah.
And so, they're not being tossed to and fro by every little upset that occurs. That they know who they are and they know what they bring. And so regardless of others' behaviors, that doesn't shift who they are.
Yeah.
Now, if we have an immature elder, it's going to look like a lot of insecurity and a lot of need for the community to validate who they are and validate their identity and be okay with or like accept what they are sharing or whatever. Whereas a mature elder can see and say what needs to be seen and said without that shifting their identity, and they can miss out on the validation of the community and it not be detrimental to their well-being.
And I don't know if we say this here, and I don't think we do, but I just had a thought as you were talking when you're talking about, the immature elder can be looking for the validation from the community, where a mature elder, he understands that, again, he's been valued. He is valued by the community, but he doesn't need the validation of that community.
Yeah, that's good.
And so he's able to, I know they value me. So, and I mean, think about this too. When you know that you're valued, then you take more risk. Like in that situation, it's like in anything, like when you know that the people you're with, they love you, they care about you, they value you, they want you in that space, then it actually frees you up, in this case, the elder, to take more risk, to say the thing that may not be the status quo or the popular opinion, because he knows he's valued in the community. Obviously, it's not they just say things because they just say things, but it is this
that honor and respect.
Because
and if that's being given too by the community, then the community takes notice of what's being said by that elder. They're also in a different place of receiving, right? They're mature enough to receive the feedback that's being delivered. Whereas again, if it's hard, right? Because I value what you bring to the table, and I'm going to listen to what you say, even if it upsets me or if it frustrates me, that as a mature person in the community too, that I can receive that. So it's this really interesting mutual exchange when we're getting to do it with maturity. Now, as we learn this as a society, because it's literally a relearning, there's going to be lots of bumps along the way of like, yes, we totally value you as an elder, and then the elder takes a risk and reminds the community who they are, and then the community's like,
who do you think you are?
Like that's some reality around what could happen, and we may have some imbalance of immaturity. That elder might be really mature, and they might be able to say like, okay, I see that you're upset about that, and I know who I am, and I'm going to be okay even if you're not okay in the midst of the situation. Now, can we move on with figuring out how it is? How do we become who we are here, and how do we grow through this? So, I think that's really interesting, and vice versa. I think we also will have mature communities trying to invite elders into this
maturity space.
That maybe they still have some gaps that they're working through, that we'll take some wisdom on the community's part of, oh, wow, there's some, remember, because it's all compounding. So if we have major gaps, and even if we're in our elder phase of life, if there's major gaps, we're not going to elder well.
Right.
But does that mean we disregard them, or does that mean we give them opportunities to try and learn and grow as well, right? Like, well, are we for one another, or are we for one another?
Right. Well, that goes right to as you were talking, I was thinking, and what you just said ties directly into this, and it's in every stage. If you look, it's the elder stage needs, and then the elder stage
for my community, right?
Task,
right?
So one begats the other, which begats the other.
Right. Which, my part and your part equals that partnership.
Right. And then, so I need you to to recognize me as an elder. And
I need to show up.
I need to show up as an elder.
Or as the healthy elder that you need me to be. Right.
Right. And so it literally is this needs and tasks that they're joined together. And I bet if we actually went back and looked at all the needs and tasks, we could probably go, you to you, you to you, you to you, you to you too. You know, that type of idea, because that's how it's designed.
I mean, you can even back up one step and say, okay, in order for me to be a healthy, mature child, I need you to be a healthy, mature parent.
Well, yes.
You know, just even something that simple around that.
Yep. To show me the things that I need to be as a child.
Right.
Yep.
So.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so another elder stage task is to realize and seek out those with without sufficient biological families, because they need real, live, loving spiritual families to heal, to grow, and to thrive. It's about giving spiritual children the same unselfish care that you gave your biological children. And this is such a need in our community. And I don't even know what this really looks like practically, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I get this concept and I see the holes, and maybe because we are foster parents, I have such we have a unique perspective on how powerful this is and how needed it is. And I think also being not parentless, but kind of parentless in our own lives, how much we still want and need this for ourselves. I think we have a double passion about this, because this is so vital to how we actually get a chance to grow in real life and not in theory. Like, we can share this idea of elders in our community and being healthy parents and blah, blah, blah. And until we share that with those in need and we're doing that, then the chance for all of us to grow is not going to happen. Just like if we said, you know what, I'm going to mind my own business and I'm going to just raise my own children. And, I feel so sorry for all those other children who don't have healthy parents. Too bad for them, you know, and mind our own business in that way, and then can't figure out why our society has become what it has become. We can be doing the same thing in this elder stage backwards as well. It's like, these parents are struggling, and gosh, they should do it a totally different way. And like, what are they even doing? And
why are they doing that?
Yeah, but yet we're not investing as elders back into the parents who need elders to help them grow in maturity. Yeah.
This goes back to, and what I had again has left me, but basically it's it's modeling. It's finding. Oh, I remember.
Great.
I started talking. Here we go. Sorry. It because in this space, there may be people in your community, parents or children, whatever, in your community, that their experience with their biological family has not been the best. And that sets them up for the rest of their life. And so as elders, we can come in and if we can realize and seek them out, and then we can be again recognized by them in this role, then these parents and or children can now begin to have new experiences,
right,
to know that there is another way,
right,
to live this life, to be a parent, to be a sibling, to be,
because they're seeing something different modeled.
Correct. And so you're literally able to rewrite their brain
through experience, right?
Through experience, in a way to where now it can become an healthy experience as opposed to a very toxic, maybe, or unhealthy one.
And rewrite your experience potentially too. I think about this in a couple different examples, but one of them being the community table that we've done. We had 20-year-olds that were coming to our table because they had no other table to sit at.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Like, we were inviting them into space. And part of what was really interesting about that is that we also had 20-year-olds
yes,
that didn't live near us, that weren't coming to our table. And that not because of any real break or anything like that, but like we couldn't.
They just couldn't.
They couldn't.
Life didn't.
Didn't allow them to. And so we could have said, you know what? Well, then we're not going to extend this to anybody else. But our willingness to extend that to someone else actually gave us a great opportunity to practice with other 20-year-olds what it would look like to relate with them, to see life through their perspective, through their eyes, through their season in this day and age in American culture. And then it gave us a different perspective for our own kids that maybe we wouldn't have seen if we were just talking to our kids or just engaging with our kids.
So good.
And I think what's so great about this too is that unfortunately many people that are at this elder stage, you're here because your kids are gone or are empty nest. You're an empty nester, your kids are young adults or beyond. And there's lots of things you wish you would have done differently, especially if you're just now learning about maturity. We didn't learn any of this until our kids were out of the house. Yeah. So there was a lot of like, oh man, I wish.
Yeah.
And what learning this has enabled us to do, and by bringing this to the community as budding elders, we've actually had a lot of chance to practice this with other people and build our skills with other people who are maybe a little bit more forgiving than our own children would be as we learn these skills.
Very
and not
true.
in a wrong way, but when you have an intimate relationship and there's pain involved because you didn't do it all right, because I don't know anybody who does, then it's a lot harder to grow a new skill and repair at the same time.
So true.
And so that's what's beautiful about this as well when we're doing this in community is that if I can practice with somebody who I don't have history with, and I can try on these new skills that I'm learning and this new person I'm becoming without a bunch of baggage that's being carried by that other person or by me into this relationship, right?
Very true.
And so this also offers an opportunity for practice that we haven't had, and vice versa, right? Like parents or adults in the community also get a chance maybe to practice with elders above them, who would be their parents when they didn't get a chance to practice with their own parents or don't feel safe practicing with their own parents.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't seek wisdom and counsel in my life because that was painful for me with my own parents. So I just don't do that anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, could there be another opportunity? Yeah,
to practice and to gain the wisdom that maybe you would have gotten from your parents if
circumstances
were differently. Yeah, I think, that's so good.
Yeah, or even healthy correction, right? Like, who corrects us when we're 40?
Right.
Hardly anybody anymore, right? Like, who would do that? Well, it's not that we don't need correction. Like, it's not that we couldn't use some advice along the way or some, direction and some shaping and molding. And without that in our lives, then we miss out on the growth that we could continue. I think about us as, we're in our mid-40s, and I'm like, geez, we have a whole lifetime to go, it feels like. We do. And who's going to help form us into the people that we're meant to be if we don't have elders in our life?
Yeah. That's so
we don't
true.
Know enough to do it by ourselves.
No, and again, there's
no way.
No, it goes back to our desire in this process of helping raise up elders and calling out the ones that are out there. Mm-hmm. So, not calling out, calling up.
Inviting whatever the words are that you might want. All right. So another elder stage task is, they're parents at large. I was misunderstanding. They are parents at large to their community and its identity. And we've already alluded to this. They help communicate, this is who we are. This is how we live. This is what's important to us. This is the kind of infant, child, adult, and parent we are.
Yeah.
And they're actually doing repair work across the generations, which is mind-blowing and amazing.
Yeah, because true elders have mastered each one of these maturity stages. And so they're able to go in and see the gaps that are there and then engage in such a way that's inviting people into a new space to where they can become healthy and whole and connected. And what I think is actually really beautiful about this too is that, and we've talked about this, but there's a lot of ways that you can actually do that without saying, hey, you need to grow in this infant level of maturity.
Right.
You can actually just start to do it. You can actually just start to ask them, hey, you see someone who maybe doesn't know how to express what they need. So you simply say, hey, I'm just curious, what do you need in this situation? Something comes up and they have no idea. Well, then helping them discover that.
Right. Yep.
is a way to do that.
It's a way to help them grow. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't, again, I think too, it was that list. And I think in all of these, it's not as formal as we make it out to be, because it happens inside of community. And so it should happen naturally. And so you have elders who are mature in these spaces, and they are consciously looking for
paying attention,
looking for gaps and looking for strengths, calling out those strengths, and then helping to fill those gaps in a very relational, natural way. That's not you need to do this because you're this.
Right. Yeah. My dream of a formal council is an idea, but it's not. It could happen. An idea that came to mind is when you have an elder in a community who's paying attention to the needs of a community, and you see a parent that's struggling to attune with their child, or to hear, or to make space for that child to be heard, or for their emotions to be validated. When an elder can step in, whether that's a grandparent or whether that's an elder in the community, can step in and attune to that child's need with the parent present, you're creating this whole beautiful synergy of, not only am I acknowledging that this is hard for the parent, and the parent realizes that they're supported through this, but the child is being seen and heard and validated, and I'm modeling how that's done. Yeah. And that child now gets to experience that parent remaining present, because I've created a way for that to happen that is invitational, and like a new way has begun. And so it can be just as simple as those type of things.
Yeah, and that is amazing to me, because in that scenario, which is very plausible, it can actually happen, you've actually affected multiple levels of maturity over multiple spaces. Right. With that action. I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah. One simple act. And that's, I think, something important to say about all of this is, as grand as these concepts may seem to be, the way that they actually happen is simple stuff like that. Every day, just normal everyday life interactions, everyday relational interactions is where this stuff transforms lives.
Yeah. And as elders, then, because you're at a different space, so now you're intentionally looking for those spaces to begin to do that with the community at large. As a parent, you're intentionally looking for those spaces with your family to do those little simple interactions.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, last two things that are elder tasks is build the trust of others through their own transparency and spontaneity, which I think is fun.
Yeah.
This isn't about elders telling others what to do and hiding all their own stuff. It is learn from me.
Yeah.
And I think this is what discipleship is also about, is follow me as I follow Christ. And what does that look like? Follow me as I figure out this maturity too.
Yeah.
And where I might have not done it so well. And oops, where I'm not doing it so well right now.
Right.
And spontaneity being what we just talked about, that this isn't about a formulaic thing or an instructional thing of like, sit down and I will tell you these things.
Right.
As much as it is about, in this moment, I'm going to get into the messy with you and your kid, and we're going to work this out together, and I'm going to lead the way through modeling.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good point. And I went back and looked at the notes we had there, and I didn't see it anywhere. But this is where story comes in really handy.
That elders bring.
In that, yeah, I mean, because specifically with this transparency piece and the vulnerability even of the transparency, depending, but it's the sharing of the story.
Right.
Of, we talked about, this is who we are, like this is how it is for us to act. And then even in their struggles, and then I'm learning this too. And so sharing the story of an example of how they got to whatever it might be, but story is we learn so much through story.
Right. And our elders carry those stories.
Our elders carry the stories. And so I think that building the trust, and I think too, because trust comes through telling stories, because you can share things that relate directly to what someone's walking through, and they're like, oh, well, you do know what I'm talking about. Like, you have been there. It may not be the same exact situation, but then there's a trust there that you can build rapport on for that specific situation, but then it also carries over into all the other areas too. Yeah. So yeah, I think story is so vitally important in that space. Yeah.
Yes. And the last task is to pull people up into their next stage of maturity.
Yeah.
And like we said, elders are uniquely positioned for this because they have, true elder has mastered all the levels of maturity. And if nothing else, they're working on them
Right.
with intention.
Yep.
And not only kind of with my example with the girl and her parent, you as an elder have the ability to reach all the way back to infancy and pull those infants into childhood through modeling and invitation. And you have the ability to pull those children into adulthood through modeling and invitation. And you have the ability to take those adults and pull them through adulthood into parenthood through modeling and invitation.
Yep.
And parents on through into elders. Because that's something we just haven't said yet is who is pulling us into this space?
Yeah.
Who is teaching us? Well, parents with children, that makes sense, right? Like parents are pulling infants to child to adult, and then adult into parent. Really, we should still be helping, but elders kind of reach back into that adult stage and help pull them forward. But who's pulling us forward as parents?
Yes. It's the elder.
It's the elder.
And I think there's an important point to be made here too. And I know we've talked a lot about, when we talk about this, the maturity stages too, we talk infant, child, adult, parent, elder, and we talk about these specific stages and the gaps, or not the gaps, but 0 to 3, 4 to 12, those ages. But I think for elders too, I think it's for elders specifically, I believe it's a duality of it. They're looking at actual infants, children, adults, and parents in those specific age ranges, but they're also looking at adults and parents who in that age range for the gaps in the infant and child.
Right, that's so good.
To be able, and then
adult,
parent, and then adult and parent, to then bring them into that space, because as adults, like we're in the beginning of, we're in the elder stage of life, but there are still infant and child gaps, and even in the adult gaps that we have, that I'll speak for myself, that I have, that that having an elder be able to help guide and see those, and then help pull me into those strengthen these gaps here and pull me into those next stages would be unbelievable.
Yeah, game changer for sure.
And so
it's really good.
Yeah. So pulling people into their next stage of maturity. So let's talk through true elders. So we've talked about the needs and the tasks. So what are true elders? And I like that statement because I say this a lot, like true elders in our community. Okay, so what does that mean when we say that? And so it's about these elders, and I think we've actually covered a lot of these things, but can handle criticism and rejection because they know who they are.
Yep.
They know their identity. I don't, again, like we said earlier, don't need your validation.
Their stability is not based on your stability.
Yeah. And they can remain themselves in the middle of hardship and enduring hard things well. So they can handle criticism and rejection. They speak the truth in love, even when it's not easy or popular, which goes directly to that last point. Serve without being appreciated. Yes.
Yeah, their energy and fuel is not coming from your appreciation. Now, what the goal here is that they still would be appreciated.
They would be appreciated. Yes.
But it's not an equal energy exchange requirement here.
Yeah.
Like their energy is coming from elsewhere, and much of it has come from their lifetime of being joy-fueled, ideally.
Yeah.
That allows them to come here and be joyful enough to pour out, and not need it back.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I don't think we mentioned it back. I think in the task, I think part of that and the needs, I think it's there, but to also have a community of elders that they can be a part of.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this, but that peer involvement is still critical. In every stage.
Yeah. And so, as I think, obviously, for parents, and I don't want to say most importantly for elders, but in every stage you need that. But as elders are given to the community, then they also need to be poured into by their peers,
one another,
that they can actually go to for counsel and have discussions about how to walk through things.
And I think there's a different metabolism within an elder, within a true healthy elder, where my serving is not as costly because I have a bigger picture in mind. My small amount of effort, because again, I don't have all the energy in the world anymore, and I don't have, there's limitations on my capacity just in the natural at this point, but there's also open doors on my capacity too. But the cost that it costs me is different because I'm not building my life anymore. I don't know how else to explain it, but I feel like all these other maturity stages, like you need a really heavy fueling source to keep your bucket full because you're pouring out. You're either pouring it in and growing yourself through those beginning stages, right? And stabilizing yourself.
Right.
And that's where all your energy's going. So when you don't have enough coming in, you just remain unstable. And then you should have enough to give out, and then you become a parent and you begin to pour out, which then completely depletes you.
Right.
And then and you're putting out 2 times 1, right? And then at this elder stage, there's something different about your capacity. Your joy bucket is so much bigger than what the pull is.
Yes.
Because again, you're not the passionate one leading
the charge,
right? But you are the one who is like the support. I don't know how to explain it. You're like the strength of the community. You're not being necessarily directly pulled on, even though you may be in certain capacities. I don't know how else to say it.
It's maybe this analogy, but it's like you're the foundation of the house, where you're not being walked on every day,
right?
But you're supporting
everything else to get the doors that open and close. And yeah. So I think there's something I don't feel like I'm articulating it well, but there's something different about the energy exchange that's happening, that when we're talking about serve without being appreciated and the fact that you're giving out with maybe without getting much back, it's not, it costs you differently.
Yeah, it does.
It just costs you differently.
Yeah. Another attribute of a true elder is they encourage needed growth and change. So they can see where the change needs to happen, and they encourage it. And they encourage the growth that needs to happen in lives and communities and community. I said that twice. And culture in the nation and the countries and whatever it might be. But they see that there needs to be a change, and then they encourage that growth and that change.
I think more than anything, they're not apathetic. There's a true elder doesn't come to the stage and then live in apathy of what they see and then don't do anything about. they're actually active in bringing about growth and change, because we all know growth and change is not usually fun or easy. Right. But they're not just sitting back letting it go to pot or letting it be whatever it's going to be and kind of washing their hands of it. They're actually involved in bringing forth the next stage of growth.
Yeah, that's true. And it goes into even, because they're fully mature. It's not no longer, it's not about them. They see that there needs to be changes and things that need to move along. So
yeah. They delight in younger people's skill and power. That's a self-explanatory one. And they empower them to actually run with that. Yeah. They create identity and not standards. And we've talked about this before, that there is a big difference between saying to a community or to a family, like, this is who we are, as in, like, it's a bar that you have to reach. And if you don't reach it, you're out, or you're disenfranchised, or you're less than, or shunned, or any of those things. Right. It is definitely a full invitation into the fullness of who we are as a group, while fully honoring who you are as an individual and your identity as well. It kind of goes back to the idea of, I don't say it right, but Ubuntu, where it is that African word that means I am because we are. Right. And drawing that out.
And I think one of the important things about creating identity and not standards is that when we create standards, then we also create performance culture. We create this space of, I have to do this thing to live up to this. And then it becomes very performance driven, and it's very, it can feel manipulative. It can be very it can be very unhealthy in that space. But when we create identity, we're saying this is who we are. And then you can call people up to their identity.
And I think there's something to be said here too, and as a word of caution around identity, that this isn't about organizational identity. Right? That's good. This isn't about like ABC organization and here's our core values, and this is who everybody needs to be now in order to belong to this organization.
Right. It's not that.
It's not that. While that can create group identity and can bring some great things to a community, this really is about understanding who we are as a people, not as a brand.
That's so,
because we can get them confused in this day and age.
Yes, we can. They're not one and the same.
They're not one and the same. That really who you are and who we are translates across every calling that may come out of this group.
Yes.
So who you are will translate regardless of what you do in your life, and whether or not, if I'm an electrician and you're an artist, that who we are translates in both of those spaces. We don't have to be doing the same thing or look identical in order to be a we.
Yes. That's good.
You living in the fullness of who you are in your unique identity only adds to the mosaic of who we are as a group. Yeah. And so that's where I think standards too, when we notice that we're trying to fit people into boxes or square pegs into round holes, then there's a little bit of red flagging there around this concept, because I think it can be twisted and manipulated a little bit.
It's really good. We place what is best for the community above personal fairness or preference.
And I think for a healthy elder, that just comes naturally.
It does.
I don't think there's a lot of thought around, well, this is what I want, but I suppose.
I guess.
Seeing that overall, they're seeing the community and its purpose and value, and and investing into that.
And they understand that, what you said. I don't need to expound on that anymore. We talked about this a little earlier, but true elders are not necessarily leading the community, but they are in the background, shouldering the weight of the community. So again, it's that foundation. They're the ones that are again, they're not up front, they're not leading, but they are looking over the community for their needs, and they are shouldering and literally carrying the weight of the growth and the health of the community on their shoulders. And that's a big task.
It's a big task, but I think what's interesting is that it shouldn't be a crushing task.
No.
And if you think about it, even though we don't get to see this modeled a ton, if you think about a grandparent in a multi-generational family, I carry the weight of my grandchildren's well-being and their health and their growth. I take it seriously, I guess might be a way to put it, but I'm not directly responsible for that at the end of the day.
Right.
If that makes sense. So I carry the weight, but I carry it differently.
True.
And distribute and give my energy to it differently than I would if I was directly raising that child. And that's kind of the point.
Yes.
Is investing into who, my investment goes into who we are.
Right.
Versus directly investing into one-on-one, even though I will.
Yes.
And should.
Yes.
It's not that.
Right.
But I don't carry the, like, what is she going to eat this morning for breakfast, and did she go on to
yeah.
bed on time?
Yeah, well, your investment into the one is for the community as a whole.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And as a parent, your investment in the one is for the growth of that one.
Yes, and as that child matures, it also, I think that's part of the switch, right?
Yes.
Is that as that child matures, I'm beginning to think about my investment into this one, which ends up being an investment into the whole.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
And I think actually, as an elder, you're thinking global. You're thinking the whole, and carrying the weight of the whole while investing into the whole and backwards into the one. I think it's interesting that it isn't a forsaking of one for the other. It's a matter of where your perspective is focused.
I think it's interesting. Yeah, we could analyze this all day, but even in that, it goes from, as a parent, it's focusing on the one, which then evolves into the whole. Mm-hmm. And then as an elder, you're focusing on the whole, which then evolves back to the one.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which I think is interesting if you think about the maturity model and how we start as focusing on the one, us, and we learn as we mature to focus on the whole. And even like in the adult stages, we learn how to focus on one other, and how this is such a beautiful progression that then leads backwards. Yeah. Yeah,
so good. So the last point we have here on the the last characteristic that we have here is for true elders is true elders live and act out of joy. Go ahead.
Elders are free agents of joy.
Yes.
Meaning they give out that I am so glad to be with you through this experience, no matter what, everywhere they go, because they're strong, stable people.
Yes.
They're free to enjoy everyone in the community. They're free to tell anyone how beautiful, smart, wonderful they are, even if you've never met them. And you've probably experienced this.
Go for it, yes.
Like, as a woman, we tend to be slow to hand out compliments to other women because, especially when we're under 40, because we're so concerned about our own and how we match up and how we measure. And maybe it's men in business or in success. And if I give you a compliment, does that diminish me in any way? And elders are not worried about that whatsoever. No. They're like, oh my gosh, look how beautiful you are.
Yeah, you've seen them. You've probably even experienced them.
Yeah, because they have this bigger picture and a greater understanding of beauty that is not... I don't want to say
it's outside of them. It's
not myopic is the word that I was thinking of, that it's not so self-centered. Yes. Like, they are no longer self-centered. That is a great way to put what an elder is in summary. Yeah. Elders are no longer self-serving and self-centered.
Yeah. That's it.
Yep.
They're a joy ambassadors or joy bombs, or they're the ones that you wrote a wild card here, but I don't like that one. But they're joy ambassadors. Everywhere they go, they bring joy. They are walking glad to be with yous.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Everywhere they go, that's it. They're the ones that, in the same kind of those two together. They're the ones that, like, see your 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum and they say, you just have a fantastic kid, and you're like, what in the world are you talking about?
Right. Or they're the ones who are saying, you're doing a great job, mama.
Yeah. Yep.
While you're ready to, like, lose your mind. Yeah.
Yep. And so
walking glad to be with yous.
Walking glad to be with yous. You've been listening to the Table and Well podcast. New episodes stream every Tuesday. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review to let us know. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to stay up to date on all things Table and Well. To learn more, start your journey, or get information on how Table and Well can help develop your community, family, or teams to be relationally healthy and authentically connected, please go to tableandwell.org/collab to schedule an interest call, or you can email us directly at known@tableandwell.org.